Dimp Digital presents the DDT WrestleCast.
Hello, Apps here from Dimp Digital, and welcome to the DDT WrestleCast. We are back for a look at AEW All Out, which took place this past weekend, and we also have a little bit of an update on the future plans and what we're doing with this podcast going forward. As usual, I'm joined by he's the current Fantasy Gaming League champion. It's the champion paper, but that could all change in the coming months. How's it going?
It's going well, and I think like other Le Champions in the world, you never lose the title.
The title goes with this belt.
No, unfortunately not. It goes. If the belt goes, it's going to Le Chump. That's what I'm calling it.
Well, we're here to take a look back at All Out, but before we do that, because we haven't been doing a podcast for ages, like the weekly wrestling podcast experiment failed. I think we had a good run. Done like 6 to 8 weeks, I think.
It was a burnout though, wasn't it? It was forcing us to watch things
sometimes.
that we just didn't really. We're busy people, and it forced. Well, yeah, I say that, but it just forces. Forces us to watch. That's the thing I think with wrestling. It's usually at least 3 hours of content a week.
Yeah.
And I think it wasn't. The most appealing wrestling content wasn't really out there at the time, and so it just it didn't quite get full steam ahead, unfortunately.
Yeah, so we will not be returning as a weekly podcast unless we win the lottery, and then we do nothing else other than podcasts and whatever we decide to do. But I was having a think, and I thought, how about we look at running the DDT WrestleCast almost as like a podcast season? So focusing on a specific theme or wrestlers or perhaps years in wrestling. So, for example, what I've kind of got in my head at the moment, nothing is finalised. There's no guarantee we'll do this. But say we decide to do Season 1, and Season 1 is just us reviewing, WWF pay-per-views from 1992. So once we've decided what that's going to be, we would go away, record those episodes in our own time. There'd be no sort of it's coming out this week and starting, edit them up nicely, maybe drop in some audio from the event, sort of give it a little bit more of production values. And then once they're all done, so once all the episodes for said season are done, upload them as a season. So this is Season 1, WWF pay-per-views 1992, and then they'll come out once a week until that season ends. It might be 4 episodes, it might be 6 episodes, it might be 10, whatever it is. And then outside of the season structure, so where we've got a specific theme, we can still do bonus episodes like this, like reviewing the AEW events. I think we are both watching AEW pretty consistently. So this could be considered like a bonus episode outside of the seasons that will come along as and when. And so I want to give that a try. But you can expect silence from this feed for a little while going forward until we figure out how and why we're going to do this. And then obviously if you've got any ideas or things that you would like covered on a season, send them over and we'll certainly take them under consideration. But Paper, what do you think of that? Good move, poor move, or are we just delaying the inevitable of this failing again?
I think it's not a bad move. I quite like the idea of us sort of going away, spending a bit more time instead of having to rush something out and do it in a season way, and where we can do something a lot more higher quality, productionized, and actually then I think everyone's benefiting. I think one of the things I hate, and there's a lot of podcasts out there and a lot of better wrestling podcasts probably out there than us. Right. However, I guess what we can do is try and bring something different to the table instead of just being that weekly rush something out, try and get something to you guys, and let's do something. In my head, do you remember when those podcasts around they did do the murders and stuff like that, and they would hunt that and stuff, and they were really good seasons and people loved them. And so think of us more of as a Netflix show rather than a weekly podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll give that a try. We'll see how we get on, and it means that we can kind of do it in our own time. And like you said, trying to rush things out doesn't help anyone. But keep the feed subscribed, because it won't do any harm to you. You're not going to be suddenly getting bombarded with episodes. It's going to be a little while, and then when we've got something, you will be the first to know about it. I might cleanse the feed. That's the only thing I'm thinking of doing, is giving it another month and then clearing the feed down, starting again. But that's, if for whatever reason you're a weirdo and you want like all the episodes you've ever done and want to keep them forever, download them now. And if you like that, then maybe you should send us some money, because that's really too much commitment that I'm more uncomfortable with. Right. All Out, September the 5th, 2020. Technically September the 6th on these shores, because it started at 1 a.m. The buy-in started at 12 a.m. Just for reference, I did not stay up and watch this one. Now, usually in fact, all the previous AEW events, I have stayed up or got up and watched them live. This one I was planning to, and I started drinking beer at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And
cool.
Yeah, it's Peroni as well, so it packs a bit of. I've got a couple here now, because I thought I was a bit stressed from putting that chair together and it not working. So, little side story. And so I ended up getting tired, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to ruin this for myself. I know I'm going to fall asleep and then wake up at like the main event and miss stuff. And that happened actually at last year's All Out. I fell asleep before Omega and Pac, and then woke up missing it, not really realising I'd missed it. And I was like, oh, they didn't do the Omega and Pac match. I wonder if something happened. Went on the internet and it's like, Pac v Omega, blah, blah, and I was like, oh, bloody hell, now I've read the ending. So, you know what, it's at an unreasonable time for us, 1 a.m. It's not, if it was a bit later, so if it started at 3 a.m, I'd probably go to bed and get up, because you can get a good, 6 hours in. If you go to bed at 9 or 10, get 5 hours in. But 1 a.m, you kind of can't really go to bed and get up. And if you stay up, you're up till 4:30, or in this case, nearly 5 o'clock. Did I make the right decision, Paper, in hindsight, now you've seen it all?
If I'm being honest, if you can stay away from spoilers, that's always the right decision with any of these things.
Yeah.
In my head, I think there are occasions when to stay up live, and in my head, that's maybe if you've got a group of you round and you're watching it together, and it's sort of more the buzz. But if you're just like us, who are just sad and lonely and don't really have many people come over to our houses,
well, no one's allowed. Well, they are allowed. I don't know, well,
actually, that's all being backed out now, isn't it, as well? So, but I think it's always worth getting a good night's sleep. And actually, I feel like I can then enjoy the event a bit more, because I've stayed up before for previous events with other companies and UFCs and stuff like that, and I feel like I'm sort of playing the battle of trying to enjoy it while also trying to keep myself awake. And then I just don't enjoy it as much, and I miss things because as you said, my eyes might wander and go to sleep, and then I just go, oh shit, and then I feel like, oh crap, I've missed that. So I do envy the guys and girls in the States who can just have it at that reasonable time. Like it'd be brilliant if it could be like a 9 p.m. say kickoff for us lot over here, but I do appreciate they wouldn't get the money from the pay-per-views, and obviously the big bucks come from the States on that side of things. Yeah,
exactly. Now this event ran for 3 hours and 50 minutes. What were they thinking? That's my first thought. I mean, I didn't realise it was that long, because I tried to not look at the time before it started. And I don't know why I did that. I just thought, I'm just going to ride this out. I've got all morning to watch this, and I was up early because of the bloody dog. So it wasn't like I was going to run out of time. And when I looked back, I was like, Christ, 3 hours and 50 minutes. And I've dug out WWE previously for having needlessly long events. To their credit, lately, pretty much since after WrestleMania, so since the pandemic really properly kicked in, all their shows have been somewhere between 2.5 hours and 3 hours, which in this pandemic era of wrestling, I think's about right. Now, they did put technically two pay-per-views on back-to-back weeks, so that's another issue, because you're asking for 5 hours in 2 weeks, which isn't great, but that's another story for another day. Revolution earlier this year was 3 hours 30 minutes. Double or Nothing was 3 hours 44 minutes. All Out 3 hours 50. Now, that's to me is a worrying trend. I don't know what you think about the length of this, and whether you felt that overall it was too long.
In my head, if they don't go past the 4 hours, I'm scouting. At the moment, it is a little bit on the long side for my liking. I do like it to be kept sort of between the sort of 3 and the 3:30 sort of period. I feel like my mind does start wandering a bit, and when it's especially that long, I feel like, unlike the WWE, I can give the AEW a little bit more slack on this one at the moment, mainly because it's won it. Yeah, you can say that. One every sort of like 3 months rather than one every month.
True.
And so I appreciate that actually in that 3 months there can be a lot of good stories going on in that time frame. And I think that a lot of that does actually show with a lot of the content on this. There was some really good build up to stories which we'll go into further in there, and even ones that might have had slower stories or newer stories. I felt like they actually the matches themselves were those matches were some of actually the better matches as well. So I don't feel so bereaved. I put my hands up and say I've not watched the buy-in yet. I contacted you beforehand and said, is it worth watching? You went, you could probably watch it, but these are the two matches. And to be honest, the buy-in, the way I was excited for was Britt and actually then they put in the pay-per-view, and I was like, well, that's sort of my interest is now peaked straight to the pay-per-view. So it was I thought that was a bit of a shame, but we'll come on to that bit later. So I'm not too fussed about the time. I think if they go past that 4 hours, I'm going to be really annoyed. But if they could knock off 20 minutes, knock off 20-30 minutes, that's my buzz zone at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, to me, it didn't feel outright. I didn't think this was one of their better pay-per-views personally. And I think then when I looked back at the time, I was like, Jesus Christ, was that how long it was? And because I watched it in the morning, I paused like between matches a couple of times because of that fucking dog I keep mentioning. It obviously breaks it up and makes it a little bit easier to digest. But I was just thinking, if I was up watching that, I definitely would have fell asleep. So I'm glad I didn't do that. I'm
also going to put it out there as hands up that I did pause it at one point to have a little snooze. So and that was in the daytime. I don't know whether that shows about my age or what the full content was, but maybe cut it down a bit. Don't make me snooze.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? Because when you watch it and you can snooze and you can pause it does make things easier. But I would never rewatch it, put it that way, because the length is just ridiculous. We mentioned the buy-in. We had Serpentico versus Joey Janela. No prizes for guessing who won that. And then Private Party versus the Dark Order. At this time, it is the combination of John Silver and Alex Reynolds. And I don't know if you know the result of that or want to know the result of that. If not, I'll just keep it to myself. But
they did say the result on the paper.
Oh, did they? Sorry, I did say they didn't. I must have been not paying attention. So blew that.
Yeah. So they say they didn't say the result, but they were just suggested Private Party are worth keeping an eye on for breaking into the top 5. So my assumption there was they've won that match earlier.
Yeah, it's actually quite a good match.
Then I've actually, but that's my fault to be fair. I've watched it out of order, so that's not a scouting at AEW. It's more of like if I'd wanted to watch it, I should have watched it before.
Yeah, but then, like you said, they took off Big Swole versus Britt Baker, which was kind of like the intriguing part, as it was a cinematic match. But that was the buy-in. It was an hour's buy-in, and the matches went, I think, in total 20 minutes. So you're not getting a lot of wrestling or bang for your buck. I don't mind. There's actually some promos on there which are quite cool from the Battle Royal. So that was quite cool to see. Like, some of the competitors just have like 20 seconds just to say, I'm in the Battle Royal, I'm going to win it, all that shit. You get people like Christopher Daniels, who you don't normally get a lot of mic time. They're semi-interesting and kind of built that up. But overall, the buy-in, as a pre-show, I always think can be forgettable. It could have been something else, but they decided to move it. So the main pay-per-view kicks off, and it's the cinematic match to kick things off. So it's Big Swole versus Britt Baker in what they've called a tooth and nails match. So a play on words there. Essentially, this was a cinematic match that took place, I'm assuming, was supposed to be inside Britt Baker's dentist office. I don't know if it actually was her dentist office. She is a real doctor and dentist, as she will tell you during her promos. But this was a cinematic match. We've aired our grievances with cinematic matches. I didn't think this was that good, personally, but they didn't obviously break the cardinal rule of putting a camera shot in that would have been impossible to put there. There was like one shot outside where the camera was there before they got out, but I was like, yeah, they could have had a camera crew waiting in case they came out, which was fine. But we didn't get any like unrealistic camera shots, at least to my eyes. But what did you think of this? Because we talk about openers a lot and we like good openers. I'm not sure the cinematic match is a good opener for the people watching at home or the crowd who have had to sit there and watch that on the big screen.
Yeah, like for me, this shouldn't have been the opening. I feel like AEW was pressured to put it into the pay-per-view.
Yeah,
they were getting a lot of grievance from people going, "Oh, it's disrespectful" and stuff like that. And I didn't take it that way. I didn't think it was disrespectful in the slightest. I just thought, something needs to budge, and I thought that they were actually giving away quite a good match. And as I said, I was quite intrigued for the buy-in. After that left, I wasn't intrigued for the buy-in at all. No. So yeah, for me, like, it was a match I was looking forward to. I was then disappointed with the outcome, and that's probably more that I'm not the biggest fan of cinematic matches. Just full stop. You can do them well, and I do appreciate AEW. As you said, not doing camera angles or things that would just definitely not happen. That's definitely a thing. I just then start looking around, critiquing it, and you could tell, for example, like in the surgery bit, the window was blacked out, but there was still light coming through it, and I was thinking, oh well, that's clearly a set then, isn't it? Or they've done something with the window to like prep it from beforehand and stuff like that, and so that sort of just little things like that start frustrating me. I'm like, if you're gonna just do it in like a proper like doctor surgery or dentist surgery and just go full hammer or whatever. But it's I wasn't a big fan of this match, if I'm being honest, and like some of the shots just looked a little bit, not poor, but like they hit each other with like clipboards and stuff like that, points at the start, and I was thinking, well, that doesn't look like it's gonna
I was shocked that something that had been put together beforehand, obviously being a cinematic match, that there was such sloppy like work in there, like punches that clearly missed, weak punches like you mentioned, hitting each other with objects where you could clearly see the other person had backed out of hitting them. And I was just like, why have you not reshot some of this to make it look the cinematic match? If you're going to do it, everything has to look clean as shit. And we saw the Randy Orton Edge match, which was tight as fuck, really. Like there was very little in the terms that you could pick apart in terms of if you just watched that and as a wrestling match, whereas this was just like, God, the work was awful. And maybe the reason was that Britt Baker's still injured. Like, this is why they've done a cinematic match. But if she's still injured, why are we putting a program on where she's got to try and wrestle or work? I don't really know.
I think the thing, I do agree. It's like, it just wasn't a very good match. And I guess to give away with the result, Swole won. Yeah. But I guess there's two things about that. I didn't really like the way she won, but she got gassed out, and I was like, I didn't even realize that was even a rule. To be fair, I didn't know that was like something that could happen. You could gas someone out, and then that happened. I was like, what? Is that it? Yeah.
She also numbed her leg by injecting her with whatever that is to numb like the area of the body. So that happened. She got injected with drugs and gassed out. Did poor Brit? It took a real battering.
Yeah. I do get why the AEW were doing it though. Like, if Brit is the best female athlete or entertainer on the mic and stuff like that, that AEW have, and she's great at it. And I think Swole. And I went into that match thinking, well, Britt's going to win this. They're going to try and push Britt, to get a title shot and stuff like that. But so that actually surprised me. Swole won, and actually I was like, well, actually it's quite a good move, because now if Britt's still injured, she's got time to recover or whatever, so they can push Swole a bit, and it gives her a bit of heat and momentum. And sometimes the women's division, I think it needs that a bit, because apart from people coming in like Thunder Rosa did later, like I'm struggling in my head to think where it's going. So I think that was quite a nice thing, like a nice sort of change in direction, or a direction that AEW is going in. But yeah, I just didn't think it was the best way to do it, like the match wise. Yeah,
no, it wasn't their best work, and the opener should be a wrestling match, not a cinematic match for everyone involved. Like, those poor fans were like, oh, right, here we go, main pay-per-view, and they had to sit there and watch that. I mean, it was only 10 minutes, to be fair. So the saving grace, I guess you could say, is that it wasn't that long. But
it should have come as the second match in my head. Like there was
just somewhere along the lines, like a little break it up. Yeah, you're right. Like,
there's plenty of wrestling on the card.
Yeah.
Looking at the card, and actually, even if they didn't want to give it near top spot, there's plenty of space they could have chucked it in between either on a second spot or third spot.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. And just for the facts and figures that people like out there, the estimation is that Double or Nothing did about 120,000 buys. So if we apply that same as All Out, which I actually think they might fall in below that, but say All Out gets 120,000 people that pay to watch it, the buy-in is currently on YouTube and it's got 389k, so it's going to get to 400,000 at some point. So that's quite a big difference in people that could have watched this match had they left it on the buy-in. But, the internet decided that was disrespectful when more people could have seen it. And maybe that's a good thing considering it wasn't a good match. So maybe they looked at it and thought, right, don't let the general public see that. That's not going to help anyone. We finally got some wrestling. The Young Bucks versus Jurassic Express. So coming into this, they've done a bit of an interesting stipulation on Dynamite where the Young Bucks were teaming in an 8-man match, and the winners of the 8-man match would face each other, get a chance to, I guess, in the storyline, earn some money by being on the main card of the pay-per-view. This is the real sort of wrestling opener. The Young Bucks go over in 15 minutes. What did you think of this tag match?
In my opinion, and this is my opinion, it was my favourite match on the whole card. I really, really liked it. I like wrestling that's, you get some good wrestling in there, but you get some spots as well, and you sort of have that with all those people involved. Like Jungle Boy can really wrestle, and actually, well, they all can, but you've got people that can do the big old spots, and Luchasaurus is something different as well. That it's just that I think it was an all in all real good mix, and there was things that just sort of kept me on the edge of my seat. I like the things like the Northern Light suplexes that Matt was doing, and he did it over the ropes, and I don't know whether it botched a bit because it looked like he was getting strangled out at one point. I don't know if you remember that. But then they carried on and they managed to they Northern Light suplexed over the barrier as well, which was quite funny. And there was lots of good spots in it. Like I enjoyed the super kick on Luchasaurus to stop the tag, and then obviously that Marcus Stunt comes in and gets involved and stuff like that. I think the big thing from me on this is, and we alluded to it, I think at a couple of pay-per-views back for AEWs, are the Young Bucks turning heel, because I really want them to turn heel. I feel like I could get it more into them if they're heel than their babyface or malarkey. And then doing little things like just taking out Marco Stunt and stuff like that, little bits like that, just shows real sort of that I think I've got a note here where super kick on Marco, heel turn, yay. So I'm hoping it wasn't just for that one match because it is babyface and babyface. But they have been alluding to it before. I know they're going for this little bit more, we're more aggressive now and stuff like that. But yeah, I feel like if there's an opportunity for them to turn heel, now's the right time, because there's all sorts going on with the Elite, and it feels like that's sort of on its way out, and we can talk about that later. Not on its way out, but things are happening there, and it feels like the Bucks could go a nice heel here, and it'd work quite well. I do think the Young Bucks would be really good as heels. I remember the match I saw them in last year. I think it was Fight for the Fallen or Fighter Fest. They had them as separate events last year, and they took on Cody and Dustin, and it was again two babyface teams, but they played the heels in that match, and that was when I was like, cool, these guys would actually make pretty good heels if they actually committed to it. But we'll get on to why I don't think that's going to happen a bit later on, because there's other things that happen later on down the card that I think makes that a no-go if they want to pull the trigger on a certain matchup. Casino Battle Royale. Winner gets before we go on to that, it's probably worth mentioning that the Young Bucks did win that match.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. And to be honest, you know what? Normally you'd look at that and say Young Bucks win easily, but one thing I will say is that the Young Bucks in the tag team tournament, which was a long time ago now, but still, this is why they probably did it. They lost a Private Party in the first round, which was like a big upset and a loss. So they're not afraid of putting other teams over, and I did wonder whether they were going to do it here. So people at that time, I don't think you had started watching it because it's in the first sort of couple of weeks. People at that time were moaning, pissing, saying they need to establish them as a top team. They shouldn't be putting younger teams over. But for someone like me who's now watched it and seen that, it actually had another sort of layer to it. Where I thought, are they going to do it again here? And I think having them be beatable means that you kind of think that actually Jurassic Express could stand a chance here. I think
and Jurassic Express looked really good as well, I thought.
They made Jungle... I know Jungle Boy took the pin, and he nearly always takes the pin, but he kicked out of a lot of stuff beforehand. So I think that was done on purpose so that he comes across as quite strong and resilient at least. And eventually it just took its toll, and you're like, poor pup. Just got
he does always take the beating when, and I get it, Jurassic Express, you're not going to have Luchasaurus take the beating because he's the big, strong, indefensible, and they need to protect that character, so it's always going to be Jungle Boy that takes that beating. I do think it was one too many moves for the finish. I've got in my notes. I would have preferred it if they had just finished on that super kick party. I felt like when he kicked out that, and then they did the BTE, is it called? But it just felt like, because it'd been going and going, it felt like if they finished at the super kick, I would have happily had that. And then I was like, you just added the number one in for the sake of it. But I felt Jungle Boy had already come across like he was kicking out loads of stuff before that point. So like it wasn't to say that it was poor. So I would have reined it in for one less sort of finisher on Jungle Boy. But apart from that, favourite match of the night for me.
Yeah, Casino Battle Royale or Royal. I don't know how people say it nowadays. Winner gets a shot at the AEW Championship. I always think that's weak piss a little bit. I don't know. I'm not sure if I like these battle royales and ladder matches deciding the next contender. They have all these rankings that they drum into us, and they're like, and you can just win it for a random battle royal, and you're like, okay. So the rankings don't mean that much because there's 21 people that could fucking win it here, and I would say well over half of these people you would not want challenging for the top. In fact, I'm looking at the. You know what? There's
probably one person there.
Yeah, and he won it, luckily.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Everyone else is like a tag team or part of like.
I'll do the rundown. I've got it here. So Trent, Christopher Daniels, Jake Hager, The Blade, Ray Phoenix, Kazarian, Will Hobbs, Chuck Taylor, Santana and Ortiz, Billy Gunn, Pentagon L0M, who's changed his name from Pentagon Jr. I don't know why they've done that. Brian Cage, who I thought, had you not had a title shot, you're legit. Ricky Starks, Darby Allin, who's had about 5 title shots and lost all of them. Sean Spears, Eddie Kingston, The Butcher, Sonny Kiss, and then Lance Archer. And then we had Matt Sydal, who came in as a final entrant, who...
Yeah, we'll come on to that.
Oh, God, I feel so sorry for that guy. But yeah, like if you look at that rundown, and really, had Brian Cage not had a title shot, you could have said, okay, it's between those two, really. You're not going to give Ricky Starks, not going to give Darby Allin another shot, but everyone else is just fodder. And that's a bit of a weak lineup in my view. But, what do you think of the battle royale structure? Because it's a casino battle royale, so they come in groups of 5, depending on the suit of card that they're assigned or they're drawn, which they never showed, so we don't know who drew what. And then there's a final entrant who's the Joker, who gets sort of like, I guess, the advantage and comes in last. But what do you think of that as a bit of a play on the Royal Rumble? Because it is pretty much they're trying to get a version of that out, and it is a stipulation and a match that will end up in a title shot.
I like these type of matches, but I want it to be a big deal, and I want it to be once a year. We had the ladder match, which was effectively the same type of sort of structure, but with a ladder in the last one, and they did it
exactly the same.
And they did it with the there's going to be a secret, not secret, but there's the last person, well, that's them naming someone coming in.
Yes.
And I just thought that it was just too similar too soon. I love, and I would say out of all of the WWE pay-per-views, the Rumble is my favourite. But I like it because it's built up and it's once a year, and it is all the top guys. All the top guys. And so, I don't really in my head know who's going to win it. Here, they've just all their top guys are in great matches. Don't get me wrong, but like I'm now thinking, really, who's going to? There's literally only one or two, maybe three guys there that you would generally really want to see have a title shot that you think might be able to take that title, because everyone else there is just going to go over against Mox, So I feel like they could look back on it and do something. And I want a battle royal. I love a battle royal, but once a year with the top guys, and girls, or however they want to do it, but not, as the effectively was going to be the second match on a card. And like at the time, one of the things I was looking at was the poster for it, like all the time. It only ever had like 10, 11 people on it. And so I was like, I don't even know who's coming into this. And maybe because I didn't watch the buy-in as well. But I'm thinking, is Kip there? Is Pac going to come back from this? I just didn't know half the people who were going to be in it. And then it was just cannon fodder. It was. Don't get me wrong, the match was a good match, but it was just a bit, wasted.
And I think you should hold back a few entrants as a surprise, so that you get that moment. You're like, oh, so say if Pac was coming back, you don't want to advertise him on a poster and say Pac's coming back. It would have been great if Pac had come back and just come out as the final entrant or as part of a batch, and then you'd have that sort of shock moment. I think you should. That's part of doing these battle royale / Royal Rumble type things, that you have a couple of surprises in there, so that people are like, oh, like when Edge come back this year, it was like, oh, Edge is back, and it was like, yes, great. But at the same point, there wasn't enough high level talent in here for it to be any other winner than Lance Archer, which it was. And like I said, Brian Cage would have been the other contender, but he's already had his title shot, so we knew that. I mean, how about this for a final four? We will rewind to talk about Seidel, but Kingston, who I like, but he's not going to win it, or win the title, I should say. He could win this. Matt Seidel, who was the last entrant. The Butcher. I can't even get out without laughing. The Butcher and Lance Archer. And at that point, there's only one winner they should do, and thankfully they did do that. But also, there's no tension there, is there, as to who should win that and who's going to go through and win it. Yeah,
in my head, the final people should have been.
What the fuck's the Butcher doing in the final four?
Yeah. Well, for the final three, at least it should have been Archer against like Stark and Cage or something like that, and then have Archer go over on Lance, and that sort of
Cage should have been in the final four, just to give you that chance that there's two big fuckers in there. Fuck it, leave them to the last two, let them have a duke it out. But fuck me, I could have beat those three.
Yeah, and I don't even know, and it was a bit of a piss poor ending as well, with fucking Jake and his snake bag just going. It's like there's no fucking snake in there, mate. We all know, because you're never going to open it.
It's 2020, Jake. We know there's not a snake being cruelly kept inside a bag.
Yeah. It's so they unless they actually start bringing a fucking snake out like WWE did with him, then I'm not believing that in the slightest. It just doesn't scare me. And they kept trying to push it, saying, "Oh, Kingston's scared of snakes." I'm like, is he? Doesn't look that scared. He's just like saying, "Get it away from me."
Yeah, he's like, "Get this overbooked shit off. I need to." You know what? I didn't even see Kingston go over the top rope properly, and I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and they mentioned that he may have gone under the bottom rope and then climbed up on the turnbuckle, which might count as going over, but I don't know. Like that, I didn't see him, because he was just on sort of the apron when the last bit kicked off, and then he fell off. I was like, is that him gone? So I don't know. Maybe there's a storyline there, but that's a shit storyline if it is.
Before we get on to like Matt and Seidel and stuff like that, there was a couple of points though I did quite enjoy from the whole. I really did. I did enjoy Darby Allin being put into the tax of a body bag. I thought that was different. I thought it was unique, and it sort of fitted in really nicely with that storyline with Darby Allin and Ricky Stark and stuff like that. And that must have hurt. And like the fact that there was still put it out there. Yeah.
Ricky Starks is like my guy now, and
really?
it annoys me that Darby Allin's feuding with him, because Darby Allin will go over and win that feud. So Starks will be set in his big first program. He's going to lose, but he's the guy that's the guy I'm backing now. So any titles he wins, I'm going to celebrate with a nice cold Peroni like I am now.
Not a little bit of the bubbly. Yeah, so I thought that was a really good spot. I did enjoy it. And I just thought it's just held to that story, and it was nice. There was some nice bits of other stories going on in the background, like Santana and sort of tease, and the best friends, like they went straight for each other. I enjoy these side story things that are going on on it. So I thought it was good. And there was the other thing that I did mention that I just didn't quite understand. There was a bunch of fireworks that went off in the fucking middle of this match.
Apparently, it was a baseball game that was starting down the road.
But it sounded like it's right on top of them.
I know. Apparently, I've read up, because I thought, what the hell's that? It was another stadium that was kicking off, and it was like, what the hell's going on? I thought something had gone off in the background by accident. I was like, shit, they accidentally set off some fireworks in the backstage area, but... Nah.
Yeah, I think I it's in my head. Do you know what I was hoping for? Like the days of Raw versus Nitro, where they would turn up at each other's and stuff like that. And I was hoping, is WWE going to go and just set off a load of bloody? You can imagine it, turn up in a van, getting a firework permit, just setting off a ton of fireworks and really annoying their show, and then just Friday on your Raw the next week, and suddenly that's a dub, because AEW are quite good at throwing a bit of shade WWE's way, and they did it in this as well at some points, and we'll get to those as well. But I would have respected that a lot more than the baseball stadium analogy.
The only other thing I had a couple of things I liked as well, but the only other things I didn't like was there's like 4 batches of people that you get the first 5 that start, then there's a second, third, and fourth batch, and there's 5 people in each of them. I raised my eyebrow when the second batch contained Kaz, Will Hobbs, Chuck Taylor, and it had Santana and Ortiz, the tag team, in the same batch. I was like, right, is it really random, or have you just put a tag team together? And then the third batch, they did it again with Brian Cage and Ricky Starks coming out in the same area. Now, I know it's only a 1 in 4 chance, or maybe a 1 in 5 with the Joker being there, but that seemed like way too convenient that 2 tag teams or 2 alliances were together in one group. I didn't like that. It should always be split up, in my view. But that aside, I liked Sonny Kiss eliminating Jake Hager. I thought that was really funny, getting rid of him, and then Sonny Kiss got eliminated anyway, as you'd expect. And Will Hobbs. Now, you won't have seen much of Will Hobbs because he may have only made like 2 Dynamite appearances, but he's been on AEW Dark, losing every match because he's one of those people. But I thought they'd done a decent job of Will Hobbs here, made him look semi-strong. And then I've looked at the rundown for AEW Dark this week. He is fighting another unknown, so he will probably win that. So this might be the start of some Will Hobbs love.
Oh, that's good. Like this is, and we're going off topic here, but this is one of my sort of gripes around AEW Dark. Every match is just a spot match, a squash match, and it's just I can't sit through it, especially if it's an hour and a half long.
It's 2 hours last week or the other week. It's like, good fuck.
See,
what am I doing?
I know they've got a big roster and they want to give everyone a bit of time, but they need to do something a bit better with that. And I know, and it's annoying me. I know they're throwing storylines on it and stuff like that. I miss out on, but I can't sit through the squash matches. There's just too many. Yeah. I appreciate a squash match or 2 that has to happen in the show, but it is every match.
Yeah, and they've got a little bit better in the last couple of weeks, putting on like 2 teams or 2 people that are semi like the same level that you think this could go either way, but generally 95% squash is the AEW Dark is just there to pad records at this stage, and like when it's 2 hours long, I'm like, no. I mean, I watched it, but I was like, no, why are you doing this to me? Which isn't ideal. But yeah, so they need to do something better with Dark, either shorten it up or make some of the matches a little bit more interesting. Maybe they're going to try and do that going forward, but I wouldn't hold my breath. We have to talk about Matt Sydal. So he was the Joker. He was the final entrant. Now, bearing in mind, going into this event, the news that came out earlier in the week was Brock Lesnar is a free agent. So his merchandise has come off the WWE store. He's been a free agent since the end of WrestleMania, but people have only just started talking about it. I don't think there's ever a realistic sort of anyone in their right mind thought Brock Lesnar's going to be the final entrant here and win it. But that was circulating. So there's that to deal with, and people thinking, oh, maybe. It's Matt Sydal, who's been in WWE. He's known as Evan Bourne. I actually used to quite like him when he was Evan Bourne. And I've not seen him on any of the indies or stuff after that, so kind of good to see him back. He's the big firework entrant. They're like, Matt Sydal, Joker, he comes in, he knee strikes Sean Spears, like a nice tight looking knee strike, goes onto the top rope. He's going to do what I can only assume was a shooting star press on Will Hobbs, and he slips. And just as he goes to jump, he slips. And I don't know how he doesn't break his neck. I'm thankful he didn't, but we love Botchamania. This is now going to be the main event of the newest Botchamania. I feel terrible for Matt Sydal. I'm glad he's okay, but what a disaster, really.
The thing is, as well, with it, that was his spot in the whole the battle royale, and actually after that he just fell into the background. And so, like, if he wanted a big entrance, he hasn't got it. And actually, like, for people now just think, well, you're just going to fall into the middle of the card now, and I'm not too worried. This is one of the things I do like about AEW is the commentary. Not all of it. Some of it's a bit pants, but actually I like the way that they're quite human about it, if anything. And they're like, come on, mate, get back up and give it another go and stuff like that. And in my head, I feel like that's what I would have liked to have seen Matt Sydal if he could have get up, but instead he looked like, and I don't know whether it's because he was hurt or whatever, but he did scowl in that corner for a little bit too long. And I just thought, oh well, that's it. I don't know whether you're sulking because it went wrong or whether you're hurt or whatever, but that's you've lost whatever brownie points you're going to get from me, and they've now gone off to someone else. So yeah, and the interesting thing, you was right, they were mentioning about Brock Lesnar the whole week. I was listening to a Q&A with Tony Khan the day before, and they went, oh, what about Brock Lesnar? And Tony Khan goes, oh, I can't talk about it, and stuff like that. And you think, oh, maybe. Realistically, it's never going to happen, but you think, oh, maybe. But yeah, Brock Lesnar, Matt Sydal, it doesn't really compare. But I do feel sorry for him. But now he's just forever in my mind. Just if he shouldn't be anywhere near the top, he really needs to pull it all out now, because that's all I'm going to think about whenever I see Matt Sydal go out, the slippy bloke off the top rope.
Poor fucker. Well, Lance Archer won it, 22 minutes, and then we got a video package for Matt Hardy versus Sammy Guevara. A broken rules match, this was tabled as. I didn't know what that meant. I thought it just meant... I wondered whether it was going to be a cinematic match, because Matt Hardy... infamous for sort of not creating it, but certainly back in the day he was one of the first to be doing it on like the Hardy compound for Impact and whatnot, but it was a last man standing match, so why it couldn't just be called that I don't know, because it has been throughout history. But anyway, the other added stipulation is that Matt Hardy will leave AEW if he loses, and normally it's a throwaway stipulation, but for this match I think it actually ended up having quite a heavy bearing on what took place. Now, first of all, the match started outside, which I wasn't really prepared for. Like, Hardy showed up near the football field where we saw the what was it called, the Stadium Stampede match, and asked for Guevara to show up. Guevara shows up in a golf cart. Hardy easily avoids it, as you would in most cases avoid a golf cart going at that pace. Pretty poor driving from Guevara's standpoint. Hardy DDT Sammy on a metal picnic table. They go into, I don't know, not a cherry picker, but like a skyjack, I guess, whatever you call that lift. Had a little brawl up there. Hardy goes for, I think he was going for the side effect, as he calls it, but Guevara counters it and ends up doing like a spear off of the lift. The aim is to land on two tables that are set up below them. Now, Matt Hardy's lower back lands pretty much on the tables, but the rest of his upper body doesn't. The back of his head slams on the cement floor, and for 45 seconds he looks like he might be dead. Seriously, I was watching it on replay and I thought, oh my god, what, that looked bad. And sometimes stuff looks bad and you think, oh, I've done a really good job, it looks really good. But then they showed the replay, I was like, no, he smashed the back of his head off the floor, back concrete there. And he's laying there. Guevara gets up, which he shouldn't have done. The referee should have said, stay down and we'll just call this off. Asked for the count to be initiated, and I was like, at that point I was a bit like, okay, maybe this is a work. Like, maybe he is okay, because they wouldn't do the count unless Matt Hardy could get up. And Matt sort of is, and by this point, by the way, I should say, the ref has already put the X sign up for like a doctor to come. Don't know where the doctor was, didn't turn up till later. Matt Hardy gets up on like 8, just about. I think Sammy goes over there and starts fumbling with him, and he cannot even walk. They're scrambling. He grabs Sammy's trunks and pulls it down, exposing Sammy's pale arse, which is paler than his normal skin, unbelievably. Like, you can almost see his heart, how pale that guy is, and his arse is even paler. And by that point, it's clear that Matt Hardy is seemingly on a different planet, and the referee calls for the X again, and eventually the bell rings, and you think, fucking hell, at least the right things happened. They go back to JR, they go back to Shivani, and JR does a good job of saying, look, the match, we're not going to see the finish of this match because something serious has happened. Matt's got a family, blah, blah, blah. And every wrestling fan at that point would be like, okay, like, we'll just move on. The stipulation doesn't matter. Maybe they can just say it was a draw because both men were up. I don't know what they're going to do. And then we cut back to the backstage. Matt is running to find Sammy. They literally do a few little punches, a little bit of brawling, go towards the scaffold. Both climb up there, including Matt Hardy, who 4 minutes ago was knocked out cold, seemingly. Sammy is punched, falls off onto a crash pad, and that's the 10 count and the match ends. I mean, what was going on here? Why was the match even going on after Hardy was seemingly dead?
So I felt sorry for Audrey Hepburn a lot of the time, because I'd imagine when you're a ref, obviously you're worried about, the safety of the competitors as well, and you could tell she was worried when Matt was there. I think when Sammy Guevara called for the 10 count, in my head I was like, well, all right, this is a way of sort of finishing the match and getting the doctor over to him really quickly and then being able to cut away. And they could have done something afterwards, like, as you said, change the specification. In my head, I was thinking, well, maybe Matt will lose and he'll lose like one of his personalities, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like they could have just said, oh, well, luckily there's, 6 Matt Hardy personalities, and you've only, that one personality is never going to come back, and just pick the one that nobody cares about. And that was a way to get around that rule. But unfortunately, I think fortunately and unfortunately, Matt Hardy did seem to sort of gain a little bit of consciousness before that 10 count finished, and it was like, and then that sort of stopped it, because I think if he hadn't, that was it. Like, that was it over. And I think Sammy I think he didn't really know what to do. He's young. He's like, being in this situation must be a bit of a strange thing for him. But I think AEW, they were, one of the things that I was thinking about when watching this was Tony Khan was talking about, the concussions, and they're quite keen on all that type of stuff. And I was thinking straight away then, if you're really keen on that, you stop this match. You don't care about, the pay-per-view and what people might complain about and stuff like that. Matt Hardy's health is the number one thing. And like, I think, as you said, if they'd called it off at that point, everyone accepts it. These things happen a lot. Most people that I think watch AEW are generally old enough to remember what happened to Owen Hart, and so no one wants to see that happen again.
No.
And so I felt like it was the wrong move. I think even if Matt Hardy, because he's concussed at that point and he won't know news, and he's just thinking, can I get back to the job? And we've seen this in other professional sports. I know there's been a lot banging on about him, like football and rugby over in the UK and stuff like that, where we've seen people try to get back onto the field and they've had to sort of say, no, you're not allowed to go back on anymore, because they just don't know what they're doing. And when he was stumbling all over the place, I was thinking, right, this is just a sign to stop it. You could even hear, and obviously they went back because Matt Hardy was like, I need to go and finish it and stuff like that. And I felt like probably Matt sort of demanded that happen, but they should have just not listened to him because he wasn't in the right frame of mind. But they clearly did. And they said, look, we're going to finish it really quickly. And the way they finished it was probably meant to be the way they finished the whole match. But they were probably going to build up to it.
Yep.
But the way, because Matt wasn't there, Sammy was just like, they just quickly climbed up there, let Matt go and literally throw a crappy punch on him, and he fell. And it was like, well, I get that's what the ending was going to be, but actually it meant nothing at that point. And I could. It's the only reason you've done that is so Matt doesn't have to keep the specification and stuff like that. I get it and stuff like that. But it was a shit ending, if I'm being honest. If we talk about the story in itself and not what happened to Matt, that ending, because of the whole thing that happened before, was crap, and it shouldn't have happened. They should have just let Guevara win it. It wasn't. And you see how hear Audrey shouting at them, going, "Come on, guys, finish this," and stuff like that. And like, that's not her saying, being a referee. That's her being just a human saying, look, if you're going to finish it fucking quickly, and like, because this is Matt needs help, and you could just tell he did. So it was a bit like, I felt like the hairs on my arm sort of go on end when you're seeing something that's just not right, if that makes sense. And I just wish they'd stopped it at that point. I've even on my notes when I put Matt Hardy knocked out question mark because I wasn't sure at the time whether it was or a piece they were doing, because I was thinking, maybe he's doing really good. And then just at the point, I think when he started stumbling around, I wrote on my notes, stop the match. Just because I didn't care at that point. I just wanted it to be over, and I don't want to watch stuff like that as well. So it's like, I think it was counterproductive. They should have just stopped it, and they could have addressed it in the next episode. Instead, now they're going to have to dress it up as in, Matt Hardy was fine, he's now not leaving Sammy, and they're going to have to play that story. Whereas I think they probably both would have made more money off it if they just left it as the way it is, because they could have made a better story off it if that's the way they really wanted to go. But hey ho.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's cost them here is, in my opinion, like a pointless stipulation of Hardy having to leave had he lost it. I don't think you should do those stipulations unless you're going to follow through with them, because it really, if something goes wrong like it did in this match, it was quite clear something went wrong. It really puts you in a difficult position. Like, not just storyline wise, but the competitors as well. Matt Hardy's probably thinking, shit, if he was thinking at all, like, I can't not win this because the stipulation's there. One famous one is when Steve Austin took on Owen Hart for the Intercontinental title, SummerSlam 97, I think it was, and Owen pile drove Austin on his neck, like almost paralysed him. And normally you just end the match because Austin could barely move. But the stipulation for the match was, if Austin loses, he has to kiss Owen Hart's arse, and you can't be getting out of that. So whenever you do these stipulations, unless your outcome is going to be the stipulation is going to be invoked, you're kind of restricting, what people. Again, I agree. People wouldn't have given a shit about the stipulation, but to maintain that this is, a show and it's consistent, you give yourself problems like this. And I remember the one they did with Cody, which was if Cody loses to Jericho at Full Gear, I think it was Full Gear last year, and he can never challenge for the AEW title again. And guess what? Cody lost, and he, up until now has not challenged. I don't think he will for a very long time. But I don't know. If you're going to do the stipulation, it has to be something that isn't so detrimental that if you need to use it, that it gets pulled in. Now, the one thing we can say is that Matt Hardy he went to hospital and he passed an MRI and a CT scan, was not diagnosed with a concussion, and was released from hospital the following day. He's due to appear on Dynamite this week. He's obviously not going to be wrestling in a scaffold match this Wednesday. He's just going to be cutting a promo, you'd think. But what a mess. I mean, there's so many things I thought was wrong with this. One, where if you're doing a stunt or a spot like that, the doctor should always be off camera, like nearby. It felt like he was sitting at ringside, and then when Aubrey called for him, like he was like, shit, I've got to move. Because he wasn't there the first time the X went up. I didn't see him anyway. I don't know if you did. I could be wrong.
No.
And then, to let it continue is just poor. This is what Tony Khan said. Matt had taken a fall in the match. I stopped the match, paused the match, and sent the doctor to check on him. So that kind of plays in that the doctor wasn't on site. And like, if you're doing something like this, he should be on site. I was concerned that Matt could be hurt, so I rang the bell to stop the match. When asked about Dr. Michael Sampson's decision to let Hardy continue, Khan said that when the doctor checked him, the doctor passed him and cleared him on the protocol. There was a good amount of time to make the decision and let the match continue. The doctor did clear him, Matt did not pressure him, and Dr. Sampson would not be pressured into clearing anybody. So what they're claiming is that Sampson sat down with him, done some sort of rapid concussion protocol test, and Matt passed it. Now, we've watched football, we watched rugby. I've seen these tests. They're not done in less than 4 minutes like they did here. They're usually a lot longer. So I don't know.
Feels like it feels like Khan's also thrown Samson under the bus a bit there as well. Like, to me, that sort of says, hey, it's not on any of us. The doctor said it was fine, and it's just a bit crap. I'd rather AEW just say, we got it wrong. Yeah. We need to address this moving forward.
We change our protocols, and if someone loses consciousness, we just stop the match. It shouldn't be, we stop the match because they've lost consciousness and then we carry on afterwards. It should be, just stop it and end it. It's done then.
Yeah,
Because Matt could have fallen
one's
off that fucking scaffold. Someone said, oh, it's okay because Matt didn't take any bumps afterwards, so he wasn't going to get a second concussion. And I was like, he climbed up about 15 foot on a scaffold. He could have slipped off that and fell.
Yeah, and it wasn't even like a nice bit of scaffold where there was like an easy ladder. It was like on the side. And I was thinking, and they climb up like like triangle places, so it's not even flat. And I was thinking, Christ, how high do they have to get? You know, I just wish they didn't do that second part. I wish they had just called the match and just been like, hey, you know, it's for the best of everyone. I think people would have been much preferred that of AEW. I think it would show a lot more of AEW as well. I think AEW sort of aimed towards like this older generation a little bit more than WWE, so we would get it a lot more. And actually, yeah, it just, I think people would have been like, we get it, like, you know, these things happen. And actually, it just, to me, it sort of shows that the guys and girls are really putting their bodies on the line for just the show.
Yeah.
And we all enjoy the show. I mean, we just don't want anyone to get, you know, seriously hurt.
Yeah, agreed. I feel a bit sorry for Sammy Guevara. Obviously, I don't think this could have been avoided. It wasn't any of their fault. It's just one of those things that happened. But he's had a torrid run of like some of it self-inflicted. Like he you know, a podcast was pulled up from 4 years ago of him saying he wanted to rape. I can't remember which WWE superstar it was.
The one with blue hair that goes
Bailey.
No, not Bailey. The one that hangs around with Bailey.
Sasha Banks.
That's it, Banks.
Yeah. So he said, I think that's what he said. And he, you know, he was 4 years old and he got sent to sensitivity training. He had 4 weeks out. So he's already on the marked list. He comes back and then within 2 weeks, he throws a chair at Matt Hardy's head really hard. Matt can't block it and it splits Matt open. That was not planned. And he got told off for that. And then now he's involved in this debacle. It's just like, maybe we should just end this feud now and let this say, look, the wrestling gods don't want this feud to continue. Someone's going to get hurt. Let's just put these two and put them on their separate ways. And then, or maybe put them together and then that way they haven't got to fight each other. But I feel a little bit sorry for Guevara because he's had, like I said, some of it's self-inflicted, but then the other two parts kind of out of his, just a bit unlucky and he's kind of been seen as someone who's maybe reckless. I don't think that's quite the case, but we'll see. Anyway, Matt Hardy's not dead. Like his T-shirt says, he can't die, which I was like, God. When I look back at that, I was like, Jesus, he's right. The man maybe is indestructible. But he won the Broken Rules match in 9 minutes, according to Wikipedia. Women's title match. We rag on the women because they're just not up to scratch, really. But we had Shida versus Thunder Rosa, who is the NWA Women's Champion. What did you think of this? 16 minutes, well, almost 17 minutes. And Shida retains over Thunder Rosa, which I don't think anyone was querying because when you have a champion coming from another promotion, you're not going to put the belt on them. But what did you think of Shida versus Thunder Rosa? And is Thunder Rosa someone that AEW might want to try and get if she comes available in the future?
I was generally really impressed with this match. I enjoyed it. I think in my notes here as well, it was a much needed wrestling match after a battle royal and then what happened with Matt Hardy. It just felt like it wasn't like what I call like spectacularly brilliant. Both women were great wrestlers and I think Thunder Rosa had some really good moves and I think it was just what I needed actually after all what had happened. It felt like I was going back to watching some wrestling and it was actually a really good match. I was really impressed with Thunder Rosa. I'd love her to be in AEW, but I'm not sure she will until whenever NWA contract finishes, and I don't know how long that is. Yeah. I felt like they had to do it in such a way as well where they had to put Thunder Rosa over to show that she was a really good competitor, and she is. And so she was going to dominate that match, which she did. But they needed Shida to win to keep the title, unless they'd done something with Rosa behind the scenes, like brought her in and no one had realised. I think that was always the way it was going to happen because NWA wouldn't let their number one woman go over there and just get beating the crap out of them. Yeah. So I thought it was a good match. I love little things in it. I was really impressed with like when Excalibur corrected, I think it was Shivani or JR to say, no, she should be the triple champ. But just because that's the awareness of the wrestling world that I want from my commentators. I want that they know that type of stuff and they have that knowledge of everything that's going on around the world, so they can just lean on that bit of knowledge. That's the type of knowledge I wouldn't have as a casual watching it. No. But I want someone that has that's their job to know that type of thing and actually let me know. So little things like that, which was really good. So overall, I really liked the match. Rosa came across really well. I'd love to hear an AEW. I feel like she's definitely a step up from most of the women in the current AEW division. I just don't think we'll see her again for a little while.
No, yeah, it was a decent enough match. I actually preferred Thunder Rosa's match on Dynamite against Serena Deeb. I thought that was a better match than this, but still better than most of the women's matches we get. Yeah, good to call out Excalibur. It was good to see him back because we hadn't had him for about at least a month because of a self-imposed exile. A video had surfaced where he had used a racial slur in a promo for a wrestling match, and I think Kevin Owens also used the same slur. So it's those two, and he felt with everything that's going on, he didn't want to put pressure or cause the company to have any heat. So as it came out and surfaced, he sort of took a self-imposed exile. And I think that the commentary was, at least for a couple of weeks, not very good with Taz, Shivani and JR, just because they don't know enough. Like, I never really thought I'd miss Excalibur, but he doesn't half bring a level of knowledge it's kind of important in today's game. Like, he knows the moves, whereas JR and Shivani and Taz just sort of guess. And good to see him back, and he made some good calls. 8-man tag match.
Oh, I think you missed, before you go on to this, there was the bit, Kip came up at this point. And I have not mentioned this before, because actually in my head I was like, why? So generally when I watch a Dynamite, I'm not massive. I like it, but I always see he's always in the corner, isn't he, with his little sign and stuff like that. And so he's not got a match because he's always sat there or something like that. But you would have assumed he was definitely prime candidate to be in the Battle Royale, like he was in the ladder match. And he was one of the better characters in that ladder match, actually. But he didn't come out in that. And I was thinking, what's happened to him? Where is he? And I just thought maybe he COVID positive or something like that, staying away. But actually he did the segment where him and Penelope are going to get married live on TV, which this does seem to be a wrestling phenomena where they'll have a wedding on the TV side by the WWE way back. But I think that was a nice little nod to olden days where you would have these weddings on wrestling, which is a bit strange, but I thought it's fun. And I think it's interesting that there's clearly someone coming back for it that's going to be the best man that we don't know who it is. I'm hoping in my head it isn't Pac, because that's the worst time. Don't bring him back for that. But I'm hoping it's going to be someone exciting or someone a little bit different. Because in my head I can't figure out who the best man is going to be at Dynamite, so I'm quite looking forward to Dynamite on Wednesday because of that little segment. And I think equally in a funny sort of way, it was nice to have Kip come up on the pay-per-view. I felt like he helped carry the company a bit. He didn't carry it, but like it was consistent, like a Dynamite performer when the COVID stuff just happened. He was always there where there was a lot of people that couldn't make it and stuff like that. And it's nice that the company had given back, I think, he's given back to him, especially as he's had the rough time of Jimmy Havoc being kicked out, where he was getting over quite well with that. And so, like, he's sort of had it a little bit rough in terms of, not making it back onto the main card because of all these things that's not really out of his control. I also felt it's funny that the AEW used this to have a little dig at the WWE, where he held up his sign saying for his Twitch channel, which I'm actually subscribed to, but I think I've watched it a few times. He's all right. He's good fun. He's not like Kip in the show, which is quite nice because it's more human. But it's nice, that with AEW, I had the little dig at the WWE, but gave them the promotion as well, where they say this is approved by the AEW or whatever it was. Because obviously earlier in the week it came out, Vince had told basically anyone on Cameo and all that type of stuff can't be on there unless he's making the bucks as well. So I enjoyed that little section just a little bit, but I thought it was nice to add it in.
Yeah, I'm not sure about this wedding. I mean, we'll see. Maybe they'll do a good job of it, but they tend to end in disaster. Just to annoy you, I'm going to say Colt Cabana is going to be the best man, and maybe you like Colt Cabana now. He's joined the Dark Order because he was in action next. Brody Lee, Colt Cabana, Evil Uno, and Stu Grayson. So that's like the A team, the Dark Order. Anyone else is the B team. They took on Dustin Rhodes, QT Marshall, Scorpio Sky and Matt Cardona. Had Ali and Brandy Rhodes at ringside as well. 8-man tag team match. The story going into this is that Dustin mainly wants revenge on Brody Lee, who dismantled Cody and took the TNT Championship off him in a shock 6 to 7 minute squash. And then whilst Cody was being stretchered out, he beat him up some more, and they choked out Brandy Rhodes and just done some nasty things. 15 minutes. The Dark Order lose, but Brody Lee doesn't take the pin. It's Colt Cabana who essentially cost the Dark Order because Brody Lee teed him up and he wanted to do a moonsault rather than just take the pin. He missed it and then was rolled up. What did you make of this as a match, an 8-man tag that's kind of halfway through the card at this point, and the storyline going into it as well? Did it earn its place on the pay-per-view main card?
So I would probably say this is one that could have been headline in a Dynamite rather than being on the pay-per-view. Yeah. I get like for me, this one, you don't really get there was good wrestling, but it wasn't spectacular wrestling, and you never really get spectacular wrestling in an 8-man tag just because there's too many people and there's too many people wanting their 5 minutes of fame and stuff like that. You're always waiting for when does Scorpio Sky get his little bit, which he came in towards the second half and stuff like that, and so you always sort of know everyone's going to get their moment and stuff like that. It's never just going to be, I don't know. It's just never. I just never find 8-man tags the best wrestling matches. I felt like therefore this was more about the story, and actually going into it, the story obviously is with Cody and all that stuff. I just felt it could have been done on a Dynamite. That story, it would have been a really good one. I don't think it needed to roll in. I did, however, enjoy the whole sort of Colt Cabana. He's I do prefer him this sort of, he's not changed his character, but I prefer him in his character in this situation that he's in now. And actually I felt like that part of the storyline is actually something I'm more interested in, what's going to happen after that. So I'm more interested now in moving forward in what's going to happen with Colt and the Dark Order, because that's a really good underground storyline that's been building for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and it was always going to get to this point where Colt does something wrong that's going to flip Brody, and it's always like the innocent person that suddenly all gets turned on and stuff like that. So yeah, if I'm being honest, I really don't care about sort of I feel like the Dustin storyline's been forced on me a bit. You want revenge for your brother, Dynamite here. I don't really mind.
If Brody Lee doesn't fucking dismantle him on Wednesday in under the time that Cody did, then there's problems. 50-year-old Dustin should not be able to hang with Brody Lee when he just destroyed his brother in 6 minutes. So if Dustin lasts 10 minutes, then they got the storytelling backwards. Yeah,
I agree with that one. It was nice to see Dustin get his shot at this title, but it could have been done on Dynamite. This wasn't even for a title, so it felt like if we're talking about saving a bit of time on the card, which we always talk about on these pay-per-views, this is one that probably could have been there, and I feel like this is one that could have easily been there, decided before this. It wasn't because the match was bad or anything like that. It's just because in the grand scheme of things, there's probably bigger fish to fry.
Yeah, I agree. It's a 15-minute match, so probably add 2, 3, maybe 4 minutes on for entrances. You've saved 20 minutes almost, and this could have been a buy-in match as well.
Yeah, this would have been a brilliant buy-in match. Yeah. Actually, it would have been if they topped this as the buy-in match. This would have been
a decent match. It wasn't bad. It would have been people, well-known people, and you're like, oh, maybe I'll. And the whole reason they do a buy-in is to push people to buy the pay-per-view. And if you put people on like this and have a decent bit of storytelling, and having Dustin's promo at the end would have been a good way to sort of send off the buy-in, because I quite liked that at the end. They actually did a post-match interview, which they never do in many events, and I think they should do more of that, even if and do some where it's not just setting up an angle for the next Dynamite, just have people react. I'd love to see more of that. That's just, I've been watching old WCW and they do that quite a lot. Even after the main event, they'll go back and talk to Flair, and you're like, yes, get to see the winner doused in champagne talking about why he's so great. But it could have been left. It wasn't a bad match, but I felt like of all the matches, you look at one and you think, right, this could have been taken out and put elsewhere. But we then get into our longest match. Little video package building this up. Adam Page, Kenny Omega versus FTR, who now have Tully Blanchard flanking them. I feel like Tully needs to get rid of Sean Spears because he's just dross. Like, replace Spears with someone decent and then have FTR as like his tag team that he manages and then make like a good stable. That's what I'm looking for Tully to do. He needs to cut his losses with Spears because last time we saw Spears on a pay-per-view, he was running around with Dustin Rhodes getting his trunks taken off and had a picture of Tully's face on his pants. So that's not what you want. But this match, so here's my view. It was 29 minutes, nearly 30 minutes. If it had gone in front of a live crowd, it would have been much, much better, which can be said for a lot of matches, but particularly with long matches, it helps, and sometimes it saves them. But by this point, I felt the crowd were flat. Even the people in the front row weren't reacting. They're planted there. So maybe think about rotating people out halfway through the event if people can't keep their energy levels up. And the crowd in the building, you couldn't hear them. I don't know if that's an issue of just having live crowds back, that there's so few of them, they're scattered about, that they don't make much noise. But I really think that this would have been a really, really good match in front of a crowd. But as it was in this pandemic era with the atmosphere suffered, that 29 minutes was just way too long. Way too long. And FTR win the belts after a little bit of a miscommunication from Omega and Adam Page. It's Kenny's fault this time. And it took 2 spike pile drivers to put Hangman down, which was a bit of an anticlimax. I was like, right, wait, they're doing the same move again? Okay. And they won it with that. I was like, fine. But what do you make of this match? Because I felt like they were trying to live up to the Young Bucks match and it was never going to work.
Yeah, I didn't really enjoy this match, if I'm being honest. And there's probably going to be people that go and throwing like their paper at me, like Brody does to John Silver in BTE. But like it's for me, this was the match that sort of made me start going a bit sleepy towards the end. And this is when, at the point, actually, I did pause watching the pay-per-view and came back to it later after the end of this match. It just went on too long. I think FTR are a good all-round team and they're brilliant pure wrestlers, but I think it's the same when I watch a lot of the old school wrestling. If it's a lot of pure wrestling, if they're longer matches, they do tend to become feel very samey, and I'm like thinking, all right, well, I appreciate the moves going on here, but like it's just at no point is there any sort of anything that I feel like I'm being.
You want like a gear change, don't you? Like, yeah, it just like what happened in the Omega and Young Bucks match. That was constantly just ratcheting up the gears. And yes, they had a live crowd to feed off, which massively helped. But yeah, they kind of feel sometimes a bit one level. And I think you're right when you say gear change, because that it's like driving on a motorway. You're just going at this. You're going fast, and you're going like it's the best your car's probably performing, but you don't know.
It just feels like it feels one level, and you never sort of like kick up in a gear and then speed off out, because you're at that sort of top level all the way throughout, and it just therefore was just a bit dull. I found like there was good spots in it. Don't get me wrong, and there was some really good bits, and you're probably right with the crowd probably would have helped, but I hadn't thought about how long it went, because I did find it a little bit boring.
Yeah. So what do you think about the story that's come out the back of this? Because it was alluding to leading up to this that Page might be turning heel because he cost the Young Bucks their match, their shot basically at the title by holding them in the gauntlet match and costing them. And then at the end of this, it seemed like Kenny was heelish and sort of stormed off, had a bit of a paddy, let poor Hangman, who just took 2 spike pile drivers fall flat, didn't help him up or anything, just stormed out. Then goes to the Young Bucks and is ranting, saying, I'm done, let's go, come with me now, all this stuff. The Bucks don't, which I thought was interesting. Where are we going with that? I mentioned earlier on that we wanted the Bucks maybe to turn heel, but now we've got FTR as the champions who are heels. I don't know. They clearly want to do the Young Bucks vs FTR match, but they can't have them with both heels doing it. So what are we going to do?
Yeah, well, I feel like Bucks obviously could go heel, but they could go like what I call the anti-hero, where people quite like him. A bit like, you look at someone like Pac. He's clearly a heel, but people really like him because he plays that heel really well and so forth. And so you'll boo him when he's against the really goody two shoes, but actually they will also then take out the people that you don't like as well. So potentially the Bucks could go that way. I've got a theory, if that's the best way to put it. I think Kenny's has always been the one that's going to turn heel out of the group. And so this, to me, that Kenny, I think, in terms of the whole time I've been watching wrestling, which isn't massive, but like if you go back to early times, Kenny's probably the best storyteller I think I've ever watched in a wrestling ring. Just I think he does things that just little things, drops hints here and there, and they sort of manifest over time. And he doesn't rush his stories as well, and so they slowly come out. And I don't know if you remember the time when it was I can't remember, it was I think it probably was an 8-man tag, actually thinking about it, but it's the time, do you remember where Kenny just jumped onto Marco Stunt and started beating the crap out of him in the ring after the bell had gone, and everyone went, "Oh, stop it!" And he was like, "Hey, I'm sorry," and stuff like that. And then I think there was a bit later on, and this is what I mean about AEW having these multiple channels. Like I think it was on a BTE episode where they went to say sorry to him. He's like, "Oh yeah, I feel really bad, sorry." But then as it panned away afterwards, he was like laughing as if like, "Hey, he quite enjoyed that." And I was thinking, there's a dark side to Kenny here that they haven't really tapped into, but it could be quite interesting. And I feel like they're slowly letting out. And when seeing that, you're right. I did think maybe Hangman could be the heel turn out of everyone and stuff like that. But actually, I've seen Hangman as people sort of feeling sorry for. He made this mistake. He's a bit of a drunk, but he's that lovable drunk because you want him to drink beer because that's these characters that you really like. A bit like. Yeah, or Stone Cold Steve Austin in people that don't know Johnson. But you want him to do that. So I do think Kenny's probably the one out of everyone that could really turn heel. But I think people would actually really dig it as well. And I think Kenny could sort of play it quite well. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. That's just a theory thrown out there. But the way it finished, where Kenny's storming off, it's like, he didn't need to storm off, did he? And actually, you looked at the end and you thought, well, actually, Paige did turn up, and Paige was probably the better wrestler out of the two of them, and he was left to take all this. And Kenny could have just, he could have been frustrated and felt like it all got on top of him. But maybe I think Kenny might be the heel turn there, and I feel like this is just the end of. Not the end of the Elite, but it's them sort of going in slightly different directions. So, like, you're going to have Kenny and Hangman that are probably going to go singles, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some sort of run in between them coming further down the line, where Kenny has turned a bit more heel, and then you got Hangman and stuff like that. And I feel like that's a match a lot of people would love to see. And then obviously you got the Bucks, therefore obviously concentrate more on the tag team belts now, and then slowly going after the FTR, because I feel like that's one they're going to probably spend a bit of time building up to. And I don't even know if that'll happen this year. That might happen at the following pay-per-view, because something gets in the Bucks' way, because something always seems to get in the Bucks' way. From getting the titles. I guess the one thing that is interesting about this match now is all men's titles are held by previous WWE employees, which peeved me off when that happened, because I was thinking, crikey, you got Brody Lee, who's obviously just left the WWE, FTR, who's just left the WWE, and Mox, who came across about a year ago, had just left the WWE. And at this moment in time, without giving the spoilers away from the main fight, which we'll come to, everyone, all the WWE, ex-WWE employees have got the belts, and I just hope that their contracts are not like they're coming over like we have to win the belt pretty soon within our first year, and that AEW are abiding to that, because there's plenty of talent there that I'd like to see have a chance with the belt. And to me that would feel, at the moment, it doesn't feel like AEW have sort of taken steps onto their own feet. They're sort of still propped up a little bit by the WWE, but having some of their own champions would just do that for me.
I think they need to start to do that. The other way you could look at it is that they're kind of showing WWE, look, you had these people who were misused, not used. Look what we've done to them in a matter of 3 months. Like, it might be that it's more of an advert for other people that might be thinking of jumping ship. It's like, look what we've done for these people who were going to be like FTR, for example. We've all seen the stories about what Vince wanted them to wear and do. He wanted to be a comedy act, and they didn't want to do it. And it was like, you come over here, you can kind of be yourselves and make a success of yourself. Yes, it's piggybacking on old WWE people, and they probably should maybe put some originals in there. But to be honest, like, WWE signed so many people and had so many people on their roster. It's hard to find someone who hasn't been there. And
yeah, but I guess what I mean is more prominent WWE.
but straight
employees.
from there and over.
Yeah. So it doesn't feel like, to me, like, I don't know, like we hear a lot of talk in AEW, and we got these young, the Jungle Boys, the MJFs, the Sammy Guevaras, the Darby Allens, which have sort of come through the ranks and the indie scenes and stuff like that. And I'm just sort of waiting for the opportunity for those guys to get the opportunity with the belt and see what they can do with it, instead of just giving the guys that have been over at WWE coming straight over and getting a chance with the belt. I do feel like some of them do help carry it. Like in Jericho, they had to put the belt on Jericho. That really helps the company and stuff like that. But I think at this stage, if they hadn't given the belts to FTR, I probably wouldn't have been disappointed. Equally so, without giving what happens away in the next match, if the belt then fell onto MJF, I also wouldn't be disappointed with that, because I feel like that's nice. We're now starting to see some of this stuff that AEW are talking about, given their chance, but maybe that's to come. Maybe I'm expecting that a little bit too soon, and maybe that's not part of their business plan yet.
Yeah, it might be just they want to establish these people that people know, like say, okay, you may have seen them on the other show, they're a big deal here, look at what they can do, and people go, oh yeah, they are. Then when they're at their peak, you then maybe pass the torch to the originals or the younger people, and then that means a bit more. I don't know, that's one way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Then get an interview with Jericho backstage, so a little pre-match interview talking about the Mimosa Mayhem match that's upcoming. Jericho pretty much says that he's I don't know if he's breaking down the fourth wall, but he's talking about how he's made Orange Cassidy a main event star, and it was an experiment for him, which if you follow his podcast or if you listen to him, like, he was not a fan of Orange Cassidy when he first saw him. And then as he started getting some traction, he kind of realised and then wanted to work with him. So it's not a lie to say that, but we had our Mimosa Mayhem match. It was a stipulation match. it was a bit of a gimmick match. We had the Mimosa, or the Buck Spheres as we would call it over here, filled 2 gallons worth of, 2 big pools or vats as they call it. If you could win by pin, submission, or by submerging your opponent into the Buck Spheres or the Mimosa. We ran for 15 minutes. It ends up with Le Champion taking the fall into the Mimosa. You said that wouldn't happen. You said Cassidy's going to lose. And yet we wake up Sunday, we watch it, and we see that Chris Jericho is covered in Mimosa and now officially loses the trilogy. How do you feel about that?
I felt a bit upset. I just like Jericho. I think that's more what it is. I just want Jericho to win all the time. But yeah, I can get it. Like, I think what Jericho's doing now, and actually what a lot of the sort of what I call the old guys in the company, a bit like the Codys, a bit like the Matt Hardys, it feels like they know their worth. They know they can bring a lot to the table, a lot of people in, but they now want to also help the new guys coming through. And if they can see someone with a bit of talent that might not get an opportunity elsewhere, or that they need to help sort of push them along, or give them the opportunity with their limelight, they've got the money, they've got the the accolades next to their name. They don't need that anymore, and they can spend that time helping these guys. And I felt like that was the type of thing that Jericho and Orange Cassidy was doing. As you said, it sort of broke down the fourth wall, where Jericho sort of come full circle now in terms of not giving him credit to actually going over on him. In terms of the match itself, it's what it is.
It's
over the top. It's Jericho. It's all a bit crazy and a bit wacky, and that's sort of what you're expecting out of a Jericho match, and it's quite nice. And that's how they've sort of been building it up with being doused in bubbly earlier and Dynamite, and then Jericho being doused in orange juice and stuff like that. You wanted this big sort of elaborate ploy and stuff like that. And I thought it was a nice match. It wasn't right home to kids about match, but it was the type of thing that you'd like, oh, that's quite nice. It broke up some good wrestling matches in between and stuff like that. And I'll be interested to see what they do with Cassidy after this, because it's giving him that platplatform. But I don't
know where he goes.
So in my head,
how.
Yeah,
how can you then put him?
I want to go back to him slow again. Like I enjoyed that he's come out of his comfort zone for a bit, but also put yourself back in that box, because I don't want too much of that, because that ruins your character. I like this whole you're not really involved in much and just turn up. Like, he did that for a good year until he met up with Pac and did that one little thing, and then everyone was like, oh wow. So go back to that little box for a little bit and maybe come out. And it's nice to know that Cassidy's got that in the pocket. But don't overuse that. Don't do it every pay-per-view. Don't do it once, maybe twice a year. Don't do it all the time, because he'll lose that laziness appeal if they do try and overdo it.
Yeah.
And the reason,
go on.
sorry.
No, go on.
I was going to say the reason that I think like what they tried to show here was like Jericho really got under Cassidy's skin, and that's what really made him like the fire under his ass. Whereas, you know, you're going to have to get someone else to come in and do that. You hope he's like the fire under his ass hasn't been just now unlit for everyone, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. And going back to, like, we talked about WWE champions and whatnot, Jericho did hold the belt. You know, Orange Cassidy now has a series win, if you want to call it that, a trilogy win over the former AEW champion. So it means, and to be honest, this match, let's be honest, it don't mean a shit, does it? He knocked someone into a pool of orange juice and bubbly. Like, it's not a clean win. So Jericho hasn't really lost much. But the record books will say that he beat Jericho 2-1, the former AEW World Champion and former WWE star. So I think that just helps Orange Cassidy. I'm a bit worried what they do next for him. I've got a feeling that whatever he does next will not be as good as this, and maybe it can't be. Maybe it's a hard act to follow, but I think he might go a bit backwards from here. But I would love to be proved wrong. We get a little commercial November the 7th, AEW Full Gear, so we know the date of the next pay-per-view. So only a couple of months, so sort of one every 3 months ish. That's a little bit sooner than normal, although I remember last time this was quite a short run to Full Gear, and there's a bit of a longer one to Revolution. Main event time, Moxley versus MJF. The build for this has been a bit hot and cold for me. It started well with the election campaign with MJF, blah blah blah. Then it just sort of derailed a bit with MJF turning into a little bit of a comedy like Weasel, which is fine, but I wasn't really feeling it. And then on the Dynamite before this, he bloodies Moxley and shows that, you know, he can be a vicious little bastard. And I felt like that vicious little bastard should have been more prominent in this program. Needless to say, they had quite a straightforward story to tell, and I like the fact they called this out, because thinking about it, I was like, yeah, Moxley does do that a lot. Like, he likes to fight on the outside, brawl, and like he wears you down, then he gets you in the ring and finishes you off. And MJF was like, I'm not going to let you do that. I don't want to do that. I want to just wrestle you. I can out wrestle you. And for the most part, that's how the match went. It was a cat and mouse game of MJF trying to avoid being on the outside with Moxley, and Moxley getting, I guess, out wrestled inside the ring in many instances, and having his shoulder and arm worked on. They'd done some good storytelling there and some good selling from Moxley. And it ended up with a stipulation that Moxley couldn't use his paradigm shift. And MJF, who is notorious for using cheating tactics, distracting the referee, hitting people with the diamond ring, which, when it was first announced, I thought, what a stupid idea, but at least they've been using it and carrying it on, and it's become part of MJF's character. Wardlow distracts the referee, goes to chuck the diamond ring to MJF. It looked like it was a bungled throw to me, so MJF can't pick it up. Moxley recovers, notices the referee's back is turned, and thinks, you know what, you're going to get a taste of your own medicine here. Nails him with the paradigm shift and pins him for the 1-2-3, and he retains his title. What do you make of the program we've just seen, and then the match and the finish?
Yeah, for me, like, the build-up, as you said, was a bit hot and cold. For me, it wasn't just that. It just felt like the build-up could have been a lot longer in the works. It just felt like, for example, like the whole Jericho Cassidy build-up. They were saying, this has been 14 weeks in the works and stuff like that. Yeah. It felt like the MJF Mox, in comparison to that, was just like a pebble in the ocean. It didn't feel like it had like a massive build-up. Like, it felt like it was like one of those WWE sort of rush jobs to get it out in a month. And I don't feel like that was great for the MJF character and so forth. I felt like this was one that could have bubbled on like under the radar for quite some time, even if Mox was beating up other people and then it sort of built up to this. And I just felt like it wasn't that. The problem with Mox at the moment, I feel like he gets about a month and a half to work with someone, and then it's on to the next person, a month and a half to work with them, on to the next one, and so forth. And I don't feel like we're building up any sort of real big, amazing storylines with Mox at the moment. And this MJF sort of fell into that sort of same bracket for me, which is a shame because MJF is probably one of my favourite AEW wrestlers and characters in it. And so I'm not worried that he didn't win and stuff like that. I would have liked to have seen him win, but I feel like, it just felt a bit rushed. And if he's going to get his first loss, then actually really, really make it mean something. And you could say, well, it was a world title shot and stuff like that, so that does mean it something because you're only losing to the best. But it felt, a bit too rushed. However, saying that...
Well, just quickly, he may have lost, but he has a very strong case that Moxley cheated.
Yes, so I think this is what I was going to sort of lead into, was in that actually, if you're going to get MJF to lose, at least give him a way to lose that he can debate that loss, which he does. I know, and so in my head, I was thinking, like, is there a way that MJF might even win, but Mox retains the belt, like count out or something like that. And Mox goes, oh, I still got the belt, and MJF's delivered, but he's still got the win. But equally, it's on the same vein. If Mox is going to win, have a reason for MJF to sort of complain about that and allow that story to continue. I'm hoping they don't just leave it. I'm hoping the MJF story, continues underneath. They might do Lance Archer, and Lance Archer might not win it or whatever, but then come back to the MJF Mox fight and allow maybe MJF to take the title at some point in the future, but allow this to keep bubbling underneath and this to be the only loss against MJF, and it wasn't the real loss and stuff like that, and he cheated, and you're going to have the whole... It'd be good because MJF can... it's like the boy that cried wolf then got eaten by the wolf. It's like MJF, the cheat that they suddenly he's lost from a cheat. And I think it could go in a good way. I'd be interested to see what AEW does with it. I hope it goes that way. I hope it just doesn't get forgotten about after this.
No, I think the trouble they've got, and this is something that I was thinking about because I remember we was talking before the event. And he was like, I hope they don't just drop this storyline. And I was like, yeah, same here. And then I thought, the trouble they have, and it's a blessing and a curse that they only have 4 pay-per-views every year. The blessing is it means that there's less to watch. They can really build the big matches when they choose to. I don't think they've quite done it here. And, all round lighter schedule, and we can do some proper long-term storytelling. The bad thing is that I think they would have a really hard job with having Full Gear's main event as the rematch between MJF and Moxley. Like, just having 2 back-to-back pay-per-views that are separated by 8 weeks, having the same main event. I don't think they can... I mean, they could, but I feel like people will be like, oh, I saw that on the last pay-per-view, I might skip it. So I think whatever happens, this will not resolve itself probably until the next, maybe Revolution next year, which is fine if they like you. I don't want them to forget this. But I feel like the only 4 a year job, he does stop them from doing immediate rematches on pay-per-views because people kind of want to see a new, fresh matchup. And if they do the storytelling properly, it's fine. It actually works out better because then you're kind of thinking, oh, it's been a long time since they last fought. MJF's got better, blah, blah, blah. He knows that Moxie's willing to cheat, all this good stuff. But it means in 2 months' time, I can't see them going back and revisiting this because it feels like it's the same event being recycled. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that.
I think it depends on how they play it. I think a lot of people would still buy it to see a rematch if the build-up is really, really good about it. If they spend a lot of time sort of doing a storytelling. However, saying that, it seemed like they're already switching context straight to Lance Archer straight afterwards. So it's like, well, that's clearly going to be, the one in 8 weeks. They're going to spend 8 weeks sort of building that one up now, and so forth. Maybe, who knows? Maybe if he drops, you could always drop. There's no saying that you can't drop the title on Dynamite as well.
I know they need to do it at some point. They do. They need to build to a big special Dynamite where the belt changes hands, just so that people know it can happen. That's all. And then people will be like, well, because every time we see a title match now, you're like, we know the belt's not going to change hands. Like, we knew Darby wasn't going to beat Moxley, although they had me convinced a couple of times when MJF hit Moxley with the belt and whatnot. But I feel like you need to do that shock change at some point, and then that'll get people talking and get a buzz. And then your future matches have there's a foundation there that they have an expectation that the belt could change hands. At the moment, it's just like anything on Dynamite, the belt staying where it is, unless it's like the tag titles or the women's title or the TNT title, which you expect to change hands.
Yeah, and they're only going to change the TNT title realistically on Dynamite because that's the TNT belt.
Yeah.
It's pay-per-view they don't have. So so that does make sense. But it's I don't know. I feel like there's something that could happen with it, but I'm quite happy for them to do Lance Archer with Moxley over the sort of next 8 weeks, and even if Moxley or Lance Archer wins that, but still have this MJF storyline bubbling under, and even so that that MJF comes out and costs Lance Archer the title, who's bound to win it or whatever at the next when he gets the opportunity, and that sets up another rematch because he wants to win it off Moxley or something like that. I feel like there's something that could be done there, even if they just go for a rematch and Moxley then proves that he can beat MJF without cheating. Then I think that's a good end to the storyline of that. But I feel like it's not over yet, and there's more story for me to tell. And if they want to drag it for 6 months, they can drag it for 6 months. I don't mind, but there's story there to be told, and I want it. I don't want it to be forgotten about.
No, I don't think they will, but it might be a little while before we get it. Be interesting to see how it's all in the next couple of weeks on Dynamite, how they dress it all up. Right, well, that's the event. That was 3 hours and 50 minutes or so of the event itself. What are we doing with thumbs up or thumbs down or thumbs in the middle? Is there where do you fall overall on All Out? And how would you compare it to Double or Nothing, which was like the first pandemic era AEW pay-per-view? And there's some similarities to it. I think we sort of write off Revolution because it had so many advantages, but what do you feel like the how the event did in comparison to Double or Nothing, and then overall where you'd put your thumbs and not up your arse?
Well, that was where I was going to go, but no. Double or Nothing was a better pay-per-view, if I'm being honest. I feel like this is the first sort of pay-per-view where I didn't dislike the pay-per-view, and I still think the pay-per-view was probably worth the money that it was. So I guess that's the takeaway from it. But I've sort of set my standards quite high with AEW.
Oh yeah.
And it just hit a little below what I sort of wanted from a pay-per-view on this one. I still think it was a good pay-per-view, and it's better than the junk that WWE have been throwing out that we've been watching. But I feel like in terms of all their pay-per-views this year, this will probably sit at the bottom of the list of ones I'd probably send people to watch. Now, don't get me wrong, there was some good matches in there. As I said, I loved the Young Bucks versus Jurassic Express, and I would definitely tell people to go and watch that. But I just felt like looking through all the other matches that were there, everything to some sort of extent is missable. Maybe the Jericho Orange Cassidy match was a bit of a classic, and that was quite nice. But I think apart from that, like everything else, it could have done on Dynamite. So it's not saying it should have been on a Dynamite, but the way it sort of ended production was it could have been done on Dynamite. And now I do feel like the Matt Hardy Sammy Guevara match, if that had happened as they probably wanted it to happen, could have been an all out classic.
Yeah.
And I do feel a bit shame for them on that one, because that was actually, looking at the list, that was the one I was probably most excited about, just because the build up to that, that happened and all that type of stuff. I was really, really excited to see where they went with that. And it was I remember in my notes, like when they did the DDT on the table, I was like, oh, and then when they went to the top of the chair, and this was all within the first couple of minutes, and I was like, this is going to be a classic, brawling, sort of street fight, whatever. But then the thing with Matt happened, and that was a real shame. But apart from that, just the people I expect a bit more of just didn't really perform as well as I'd hoped they had. I'd still give it a thumbs up, as in it was a good pay-per-view. But I wouldn't give it multiple thumbs up, if that makes sense. I would have happily paid the money to watch it, but I feel like they've done better. That's the problem.
To me it lacked, I enjoyed I think I would agree with you, the best or my favourite match was the Young Bucks v Jurassic Express, or Lucha Express as Jim Ross keeps calling them. I would agree that's probably the best match, and we were robbed of the Matt Hardy match, and then we had the added stuff that happened with how the match carried on, which was just like, no, don't be doing that. And I feel like that after that match, it did kind of knock me. I struggled to focus a little bit because I was like, I don't know what's wrong with Matt. Like, and I thought, like, if something serious had happened, I'd have seen it in, like, I don't know. I didn't go on Twitter or the news, but I just feel like I would have known somehow. Like, Adkins would have woke up and seen it and gone, oh, Matt Hardy's really, and I'd have been like, shit. But so I knew that I thought he was okay, but I still that kind of dragged through for a good like hour afterwards. Like that whole downer of like, is Matt going to be all right? And there wasn't really like, I remember on the Double or Nothing, again, it's pandemic era. We had the Stadium Stampede and the Moxley v Brodley, but my favourite match on that was Jungle Boy v MJF. I thought that was a really great match. I didn't get any great matches here. I had a lot of okay matches, a lot of decent matches, some good, some not so good. And all in all, the bar is very high. I've watched, I think now 6 sort of events that are outside Dynamite for AEW since they started, and this was easily the worst one of the lot. So they have set a high standard in comparison to their counterparts and whatnot, but when you don't meet the standard you get punished, and for that it goes for as a thumbs in the middle for me. Too long as well, like way too long. Like cut half hour out of that, please.
Yeah, you could easily you could have put the Britt Baker one on the buy-in and not be pushing that, and then the Nightmare Family versus the Dark Order could have been on the buy-in as well, and you could have dropped the Janela versus, who was he fighting again?
Serpentico.
Why is even Serpentico even getting it? I don't know, man. He's a dark fodder that at the moment they're using. Like, at least have the buy-in, like the Private Party one I get, and the Dark Order one, because they do appear on.
Not much star power there, is there?
No, that's exactly. You should have a little bit of star power, and I feel like that Dark Order match, because he didn't have the belt, it would have been good to have a champion on that, buy-in, and could have told a really good story. But yeah, hey ho, it is what it is. Hopefully they live and learn.
Yeah. So that's AEW All Out. I guess we'll be back for full gear, providing nothing goes disastrously wrong with AEW in the meantime. And that'll be a bonus episode. Like I said, I don't really know what's going on with the feed just yet. Well, we do. We're planning to do some season-based content, but the bonus episodes, we'll continue to roll them out. So stay subscribed and you'll see our opinions on that. But that'll do it. Thanks for joining us on this edition, Mr. Paper. We'll be back at some point in the future to talk about AEW and maybe some other subjects. But everyone that's listening, nothing more for us to say apart from thanks for your time, and ta-da.
This was a Dimp Digital production.